Thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us today.
It's great to be with you.
You know, you were elected in 2020 right on the heels of a national movement where we were hearing, cries against racial injustice and cries for more police accountability. You campaigned with the promise that you were going to come in and you were going to do things differently and you were going to address those things. How have you kept that campaign promise?
Well, we absolutely have. I'm really proud of our record over the last 3 years, working to fix our broken criminal justice system and improve the safety of our community. Over the last 3 years, we have put in place new strategies to prevent gun violence before it happens. We have held our promise to stand by survivors of sexual assault, and we have increased the number of sexual assault convictions from the last administration to ours. We have held people accountable who commit acts of violence in our community, but at the same time, we've begun to reduce our reliance on incarceration and begin to address the root causes of crime in our community. And as a result of that work, this is one of the safest communities in the country. We have a lower rate of violent crime than liberal bastions like Beaumont and Lubbock and Amarillo. We have the lowest violent crime rate of any major city in the state of Texas. And since I took office in 2021, homicides are down 20%, violent crime overall is down 10%, property crime is down. So we know that the strategies that we are using work. We know that following the data and the evidence, that working with our community is effective at keeping our community safe.
Yeah. You know, you also said back in 2020 that you would seek accountability for the officers for some of their actions during those May 2020 social justice protests. And we saw indictments handed down on nearly 24 officers, but then charges dropped on almost all of them. Right. What do you say to people who feel like that promise was broken?
Yeah, so at the end of last year, the district attorney's office received a brand new investigation from the Austin Police Department. And for the first time, at the end of 2023, the Austin Police Department concluded that senior members of the Austin Police Department knew prior to the protest that the weapons used during the protest were capable of and had caused serious injury. The Austin Police Department did not initiate this investigation and did not reach this conclusion until the statute of limitations had run for the leadership team and for the department itself. At the end of the day, the job of the district attorney's office is to seek just outcomes. It would be unjust to hold line officers criminally accountable when their leadership, when the agency that may have contributed to these serious injuries is shielded from criminal liability because of their own delay in investigating the facts and circumstances of what happened in the summer of 2020. That's why the mayor joined me in a request to the Department of Justice seeking a pattern and practice investigation into the Austin Police Department so that we can finally get to the bottom of what happened that summer. And we should remember what happened that summer. During May of 2020, Austin Police Department officers fired deadly weapons into crowds of unarmed people almost 700 times and caused serious injuries to far too many innocent bystanders, people who were standing, people who were holding signs, people who were chanting, were shot and seriously injured. There are 4 criminal cases that are moving forward, where we will be trying those cases later this year. And we continue to review the actions of the Austin Police Department and this new report to determine what legal repercussions there may be for this action.
Do you believe the timing of the report was intentional?
We have very serious concerns about the timing and substance of the report. I have communicated those concerns to senior leadership in the city of Austin. And I have communicated those concerns to the Department of Justice, and we are currently reviewing the facts and circumstances surrounding the production of this report.
You know, how does that impact your ability to then work with the department in order to prosecute cases?
Yeah, I'm really proud of the way we work with law enforcement every day in this community. You know, as I said, over the last 3 years, we've put in place new strategies to address the root causes of crime in our community. We have a brand new initiative that began in July of last year that addresses the root causes of domestic violence in the home and ends the arrest of children in our community. This program is early in its existence, but we're already seeing exciting success. This program exists and works because of a partnership we have with the Austin Police Department, the Travis County Sheriff's Office, the Pflugerville Police Department, and the Manor Police Department. We've worked closely with the Austin Police Department to develop strategies to prevent gun violence before it happens in our community. We've worked closely with the Austin Police Department to increase the number of sexual assault convictions and to build a criminal justice system where survivors are believed and treated with dignity and respect. We work with our partners in law enforcement every day outside of the spotlight on individual cases winning justice for victims of crime. I am incredibly proud of our relationship with law enforcement, and I think we can see the results of that collaborative work.
You talked to us about some of the just now you're speaking about some of the programs that were put in place. Are there other changes that you've made within that office over these past 3 years that you believe are working really well in the DA's office, things that you think should be continuing?
Absolutely. Let me start with that program because I think it is revolutionary. It is called the Travis County Transformation Project. It was named by our community partners who are serving families who are experiencing violence in the home. We know that over the last 10 years, the number one criminal offense that juveniles face in our community, the number one reason that kids get arrested is for violence between the child and their parent. What has happened for 60 years in this town is that when that happens, the kid goes to jail. Because of this work, because of this partnership, when law enforcement arrives at a home, a parent now has a choice. Their child can be arrested and go to jail, or their child can go to a respite center, where they can continue to go to school, where they can receive services and counseling. But if the parents choose that path, the entire family has to enter into a 10-week intensive restorative justice and counseling program so that we can begin to address the root causes of violence in the home. This work matters for so many reasons. One, because we have an opportunity to change the trajectory of the lives of kids in our neighborhood, kids in our community. But we also know what the consequences are of letting violence go unchecked when it happens in the home. Over the same period of time, over the same 10 years, we know that a plurality of all homicides arise out of a domestic violence context. Of course, we have to hold people accountable who commit acts of domestic violence. But if we are serious about our long-term public safety, we have to do more to address the root causes of violence in the home, and that's what we are doing. I just mentioned that over the last 3 years, we've put in place new strategies to prevent gun violence before it happens. And there's some really promising data that getting victims of gun violence the help that they need prevents gun violence over the long term. We know that if you are a victim of gun violence once, the likelihood that you will be a victim of gun violence in the future goes up exponentially. We also know that victims of gun violence today are too often perpetrators of gun violence tomorrow. And so meeting the needs of victims of gun violence is not just the right thing to do, but it is in the long-term interest of our public safety. So we partnered with Travis County Commissioner's Court to start a hospital-based violence intervention program that works with the hospital system to meet the needs of victims of gun violence. We have completely changed our policies in the office and are working with APD to change their policies to make sure we're meeting the needs of survivors of sexual assault. We have doubled the size of our victim witness counselor team so that every survivor of sexual assault has access to a trauma-informed counselor to help them navigate the system. It helps them stay engaged in the criminal process, helps them have confidence in the system and report their crimes so that we can hold people who commit acts of sexual violence accountable. And we're already seeing the results. We have nearly doubled the amount of sexual assault convictions from my administration to the last administration. We have begun the work of treating substance use disorder like the public health crisis that it is. The fact of the matter is that the war on drugs has failed. The data is really clear that every day a person struggling with substance use disorder stays in jail, the likelihood that they will commit a new crime goes up. And so we have invested time and resources in partnership with Travis County Commissioner's Court into harm reduction strategies, into access to services for people struggling with substance use disorder. There is so much work that has just begun that is every day improving the safety of our community and making our criminal justice system more just and fair for everyone. We're just getting started, and I'm really excited about the work that lies ahead.
You know, your primary opponent, Jeremy Sylestine, points out what he sees as failures within your office. High turnover between prosecutors, a larger workload for all of the prosecutors in the office, missed deadlines on some cases, and in some cases a failure to prosecute cases. What is your response to that?
You know, these issues are so much bigger and deeper than my Republican-backed opponents' right-wing talking points. So I want to talk about these issues, if we can, with the seriousness that they deserve. I am really proud of my record leading our district attorney's office, leading our criminal justice system out of the deadliest pandemic that our nation has seen in a century. Just as a reminder, criminal district courts were closed in Travis County from March of 2020 to March of 2022. That means for almost the first 2 years of my administration, there were no jury trials happening because of the pandemic. We also know that the pandemic has resulted in significant and serious changes to our labor market. There are labor shortages in almost every sector of the economy. We have teacher shortages, nursing shortages, shortages in retail, shortages in law enforcement. Prosecutors' offices have been no different. It's why I know you cover the legislature. You may be aware that just this past session, the legislature increased pay for prosecutors so that they could compete with private sector jobs. But here is the reality. Against that backdrop, the Travis County District Attorney's Office has been a bright light and an example about how to recruit and retain quality prosecutors. So just some context. If you look across the country, because this is a national phenomenon, what you will see is significant shortages in major offices around the country. The Harris County DA's office has a 15% vacancy rate, which, by the way, is relatively low compared to other major cities across the country. There are prosecutor offices that have 20% vacancy rates. As you and I sit here now, the Travis County District Attorney's Office has one opening. And that is because, for two reasons. One, this is one of the safest communities in the country, and people love to come to Austin, and they love to work here. But it's also because we are building a district attorney's office that prosecutors are proud to work in and want to work in. We're recruiting prosecutors from all over the state, and it's why our vacancy rates are so much lower than prosecutor offices across the country. Let me just say one other thing about this. The overwhelming majority of our team are seasoned, experienced prosecutors. Over 80% of our prosecutors have 5 years of experience or more. But in order to build the kind of criminal justice system that lives up to the aspirations of this community, we have very purposefully recruited young attorneys who reflect the lived experiences of this community. We have recruited prosecutors of color. We have prosecuted women, and we have recruited women, and we have a pipeline that we have built to recruit young attorneys into our office and to help them grow and develop. And so I am incredibly proud of the way of our vacancy rate compared to vacancy rates across the state. I am proud of the experienced team of prosecutors that we have, and I'm incredibly proud of the young crop of diverse prosecutors that we have recruited over the last 3 years, and I'm excited about what their growth means for the long-term health of our criminal justice system.
Just for the record, you said March 2016. You mean March 2022, when you were able to start prosecuting?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had it very clear.
Just to be clear about that, criminal courts closed in March of 2020 and reopened in approximately March of 2022.
You know, I think it's fair to say that you and Mr. Sylestine have very different ideas of how you achieve public safety through criminal justice in our community. He describes his approach as being, quote, more balanced, more pragmatic, and common sense. You know, he has said, I think bad guys do need to go to jail. What is your approach?
Well, first of all, I don't know what any of that means. My opponent has not proposed a single new idea, has not proposed any detailed plan of what he would do. As I hear my opponent talk, what we hear is more of the same tired old solutions that we have been hearing in this country for almost 200 years, which is that if we want public safety, what we have to do is lock up as many people as we can, who, by the way, happen to be predominantly working class people and people of color. And it's not surprising to hear that old tough on crime approach coming from my opponent, because we know how and why he is in this race. We know that the majority of his support comes from deep-pocketed right-wing donors who are upset at the progress that we have made. Here is one place where my opponent and I may agree, which is that, of course, we believe that people who cause harm in our community should be held accountable, and that people who commit acts of violence should be in jail. And every single day, the dedicated prosecutors at the Travis County District Attorney's Office work to hold people accountable who commit acts of violence. But what we know and what we see every day, what we know from our lived experiences and what the data and evidence supports, is that what public safety is access to good jobs. What public safety is access to good schools to send our children. It is access to health care and mental health care. What public safety is stability. When communities are stable, they are safe. And it is why Austin is one of the safest communities in the country, because our Democrat elected leadership has time and time again invested in stability over fear-mongering. And the results speak for themselves. Our city council and our commissioners court have made record investments in housing in affordable housing. They've made record investments in health care and mental health care. They have made record investments in pay for teachers. And at the district attorney's office, we have also taken approaches that support the stability of this community. I want to give you one example. We had a young man enter our criminal justice system, and he was charged with possession of cocaine. He was a single father who had never had a meaningful opportunity for a career in his life. He was hustling to support his family. And when he came to our office, we gave him the choice to enter into a program sponsored by the Carpenters. He took that opportunity, and the Carpenters told us he was their best student. And so instead of leaving our criminal justice system as a convicted felon, he left our criminal justice system as a carpenter's apprentice with his first opportunity to have a meaningful career. And again, that's not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do for our long-term public safety. So, of course, we hold people accountable who commit acts of violence. As I just said, we've tried more homicide cases and won more of them than the last administration. We are holding people accountable who commit acts of violence. We've increased the number of sexual assault convictions from the last administration to ours. But we know that the challenges that face our community, that threaten our public safety, are not challenges that we can arrest and prosecute our way out of. If we are serious about our long-term public safety, we have to pursue strategies that strengthen the stability of our community. And that's what we do.
I think a lot of Travis County voters and really residents in our area would have liked to be able to see a debate between you and your opponent. We extended the invitation for you to participate in a debate. That was declined. You also didn't participate in a candidate forum by the Downtown Austin Alliance that happened earlier this week. Why?
Let me just say a few things about that. I have had the opportunity to debate my Republican-backed opponent, I think 5 times over the last several months. And I'm really proud to share with you that every time we have debated, we have won the endorsement of the organization in front of whom we were debating. In fact, there is footage on the internet right now of some of those debates. We have certainly debated. The community has had opportunities to see us debate. They've had opportunities to hear our message. But from our perspective, the time for talking is over and the time for voting is now. And that is how we are spending our time, communicating directly with voters. Let me also just mention that, as we sit here now, I'm happy to sit with you. I have taken time out of running the district attorney's office to come be with you. As you know, we are in the middle of a trial against the deputies who killed Javier Ambler. We are in the middle of multiple serious criminal cases, and that is where my focus is, on doing the work of the district attorney's office and talking directly with voters. We've been grateful for the opportunities to debate our Republican-backed opponent. We have done that, and we've been successful in every one of them.
For you, what's on the line this election?
What is on the line is the long-term safety and vitality of this community. Our community came out and spoke up in record numbers in 2020 and demanded changes to their criminal justice system. The changes that they sought in 2020 are happening all around us. And we can see the results. We can see the progress. Since I took office in 2021, homicides are down 20%. Violent crime is down 10%. Property crime is down. And at the same time, our criminal justice system is treating people more fairly and is itself more just. So really, this is a question of whether we're going to keep this progress going or whether we're going to go back to the old days of Richard Nixon's tough on crime campaigns. That's what we're seeing play out over the airwaves. That's what we're hearing from our opponent. This path keeps our community safe, and we're excited to keep making this progress. Can I add just one thing? Yeah. I think this is just an important point to make. The statute, the law that our legislature enacted that defines what the job of the prosecutor is, says explicitly that the job of the prosecutor is not to seek convictions, but it is to see that justice is done. In our democracy and in our system of government, it is our community who gets to decide what justice is and what justice means. They get to make that decision by electing their district attorney, their county attorney, their judges, their sheriff, their city council members who hire their police chief. And they get to make those decisions by serving on juries and grand juries. Over the last 3 years, time and time again, we have stood up for the values of this community and for what justice means for our community. We stood up to Greg Abbott when he sought to criminalize people who seek abortions in this community. We stood up to Ken Paxton when he sought to remove transgender children from their parents in this community. The job of the district attorney, the job of the prosecutor, is to reflect the values of this community, and I am proud of the way that we have done that over the last 3 years.